In my family, I had a clearly defined role. I was the official scapegoat. Every forgotten birthday, every holiday argument, every burnt dinner, it was all somehow my fault. I was the convenient black hole for all of my mother's anxieties, and my older sister Amelia's resentments. Tonight, this dynamic was the main event at my mother's 60th birthday party. The supposed crime? The custom-designed cake, which I had ordered and paid for, had a minor smudge in the icing on one side. Amelia, the golden child, discovered it and was now holding court in front of our relatives. "It's just typical, isn't it?" she said, her voice dripping with performative disappointment. "Maya just can't ever get it right. It's like she wants to ruin everything." My mother stood beside her, nodding with a pained expression as if I'd committed a cardinal sin. I just stood there, frozen in the spotlight of their public disapproval, the familiar shame washing over me. But as I opened my mouth to offer the apology they were all expecting, a calm voice cut through the tension. "I think the cake looks wonderful." Everyone turned. Standing there was a woman I hadn't seen in years. My Aunt Carol, my late father's sister, a world-renowned art dealer my mother had cut ties with. She walked past them, straight to me, and placed a gentle hand on my arm. Her eyes were kind. "In fact," she said, her voice now loud enough for all to hear, "it shows the kind of attention to detail I've been looking for. Maya, I saw your portfolio online. I'm opening a new gallery in New York. I want you to be its head curator." "Of course." My Aunt Carol's voice was like a bucket of cold water, snapping me out of a trance I'd been in for 20 years. As she stood there, a guardian angel in a designer dress, the memories of every time I'd stood in that same spotlight, with no one to defend me, came rushing back. The past wasn't just a memory, it was a collection of scars, each with a name. There was the locket incident. I was 12. My mother's antique locket, a family heirloom, went missing. My sister, Amelia, had been showing it off to her friends that afternoon. When my mother couldn't find it, Amelia's eyes filled with tears and she immediately said, "I think Maya was playing with it." It was a lie, a simple, childish lie. But my mother's investigation began and ended there. She didn't look in Amelia's room, where the locket was later found tangled in a scarf. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a cold disappointment that was far worse than anger. My denials were dismissed as more evidence of my difficult nature. For a month, I was treated like a criminal in my own home, a pariah for a crime I didn't commit, while Amelia basked in the warm glow of her own perceived honesty. Then there was the scholarship sabotage when I was 17. I had worked tirelessly on my application for a summer arts program, my one dream of escaping for a few months. Amelia, who had decided at the last minute to apply for the same program with a far weaker portfolio, became a black hole of need. My mother insisted I help her. "She's so stressed, Maya. A sister's job is to support her family." I spent nights helping Amelia with her essays, sacrificing my own final preparations. When the acceptance letters came, I was the only one who got in. There was no celebration. My mother's first words were, "Well, you can't go. It would absolutely crush your sister." My success wasn't my own. It was a weapon that had been used against my family. I was selfish for winning. I was cruel for having a dream that Amelia couldn't achieve. I stayed home. My father was the one who saw it. He was the buffer, the one who would quietly tell me I was talented and strong. His sister, my Aunt Carol, saw it too. But after he passed away, my mother couldn't stand having Carol's clear, knowing eyes in her home. She couldn't stand a witness. So she manufactured an argument and cut her out, ensuring her little kingdom of 2 against 1 would never be challenged. Until tonight. Tonight, the ghost of the only person who ever fought for me had returned, and she was looking at me like I was the masterpiece, not the mistake. The silence that followed my aunt's announcement was thick and heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. The party guests, who moments before had been staring at me with pity, were now looking at me with a mixture of shock and awe. My mother and Amelia were frozen, their faces pale, their public performance of my inadequacy utterly shattered. Aunt Carol didn't give them a chance to recover. She put a warm, steadying hand on my back and gently guided me away from the center of the room, leading me toward the French doors that opened onto the garden. It felt like being pulled from a sinking ship onto a lifeboat. Once we were outside in the cool night air, she turned to me, her eyes filled with a sad, fierce love. "I am so sorry, Maya," she said, her voice low. "I never should have let your mother isolate you. Your father would be ashamed of what this has become." She took a breath. "But I want you to know this isn't pity. I've been following your work. That little gallery you assist at has put on 3 of the most interesting contemporary shows in the state, and I know that was your eye. That was your work. You are immensely talented, and you are wasting away here." I looked back through the glass. I could see my mother and sister huddled together, whispering furiously, shooting venomous looks in our direction. For my entire life, their opinion had been the sun I orbited, a cruel, distant star I could never get close enough to. But from here, in the quiet of the garden with my aunt, they just looked small. All the years of shrinking myself, of apologizing, for my very existence, culminated in this one single moment of choice. Stay in the dying orbit of their disapproval, or fly toward a new sun. "Yes," I said, my voice trembling but clear. "Aunt Carol, yes, I accept." A brilliant, beautiful smile spread across her face. She took my hand and led me back into the party. She didn't walk to the corner. She walked right back to the center of the room, raised her champagne flute high, and in a voice that commanded the attention of every person there, she announced, "To Maya, the brilliant new head curator of the Vance Gallery, Soho. New York is lucky to have her." The room erupted in applause. People I barely knew were smiling, raising their glasses to me. My mother's 60th birthday party had just become my official coronation, and she and my sister had no choice but to stand there and watch. Of course. I woke up the next morning in my Aunt Carol's guest suite, the sun streaming through a window that overlooked a calm, quiet garden. For the first time in my life, I felt the absence of dread, a feeling so foreign it was almost disorienting. The peace lasted until my phone buzzed just before noon. It was my mother. Her voice wasn't angry, it was worse. It was thick with the sticky sweetness of a martyr. "I just don't understand how you could be so cruel, Maya," she began, the pre-rehearsed, tears already choking her voice. "To let Carol use you to humiliate me at my own birthday party. She's a vindictive woman, and she's poisoning you against your own family. Is that what you want? To abandon the people who raised you for some flashy job? We need you here. Your sister is devastated." She twisted my rescue into an act of aggression, my opportunity into a betrayal. She wasn't asking me to stay. She was commanding me to return to my role as the source of her drama. When her guilt trip failed, Amelia launched a direct assault. A barrage of texts began, each one a poisoned dart. "Hope you're happy. You ruined Mom's birthday." Then, "You're not talented enough for New York. You're going to fail, and it's going to be embarrassing." And finally, "You'll come crawling back. You always do. You have no one else." But the final, unforgivable betrayal came that afternoon. My aunt sat me down, her expression grim. "I need to tell you something," she said calmly. "The director of my New York gallery called me an hour ago. A woman named Amelia called the gallery's main line claiming to be your concerned sister. She told the director that you have a history of instability and are not reliable under pressure, and that they should reconsider their offer for my sake." I just stared at her. The air left my lungs. It was one thing to be the family punching bag in private. It was another thing entirely for my own sister to actively try and sabotage my escape, to try and burn down my future just to keep me trapped in her miserable present. It wasn't just jealousy. It was a calculated, vicious attempt to destroy me. Any last shred of familial obligation, any lingering speck of guilt, turned to dust. This wasn't a dysfunctional family I was leaving behind. It was a cage. And my sister had just tried to weld the door shut. My aunt looked at me, her eyes full of fury on my behalf. "Don't worry," she said, her voice like steel. "I handled it, but now you see what you're dealing with." I did, and I knew this wasn't over. A simple, Exit wasn't enough. I needed to have a final closing ceremony. Hearing what Amelia had done didn't make me cry. The sadness had been burned out of me, cauterized by the sheer heat of her malice. All that was left was a terrifying crystal clarity. It was the kind of clarity you get after a high fever breaks. I looked at my aunt, and she saw the shift in my eyes. The hurt was gone. The scapegoat was gone. In her place was something new, something hard and unyielding. I finally understood. They didn't just need me to be the villain in their story. They needed me to fail. My failures were the glue that held their fragile sense of superiority together. My success wasn't just an inconvenience. It was an existential threat to the world they had built. My sister's attempt to sabotage me wasn't just an act of jealousy. It was an act of self-preservation. They were trying to shore up the foundations of their kingdom by burying me in the dungeon. And I realized that just leaving for New York wasn't enough. It was a silent escape. It would allow them to control the narrative, to tell everyone that I had run away, that I was unstable, that I had abandoned them. They would continue to be the victims, and I, the villain. No, I had spent a lifetime having my story told for me by my abusers. That was over. I have to see them, I said to my aunt, my voice steady. One last time. A look of understanding passed over her face. She nodded slowly, not as an aunt, but as a CEO planning a final, hostile takeover. You're right, she said, but not on their territory, not on their terms, and not alone. I took out my phone and sent a single joint text to my mother and Amelia. It was short, cold, and professional. There are outstanding issues that require a final in-person meeting before my departure. Be at the offices of Harris, Finch, and Gable tomorrow at 4 p.m. My Aunt Carol and my legal counsel will be present. I hit send. It wasn't an invitation. It was a subpoena. They thought they had tried to burn my future to the ground in secret. They had no idea they were about to be put on trial for it, with witnesses. My mother and Amelia walked into the lawyer's conference room like they were entering a battle they expected to win. They saw the mahogany table, the leather chairs, and me, and immediately launched their offensive. I simply don't understand. All this drama, Maya, my mother began, her voice trembling with manufactured victimhood. A family shouldn't need lawyers to talk. My Aunt Carol, who was sitting beside me, calmly raised a hand to silence her. This isn't a family discussion, Helen, she said, her voice cutting through the air like ice. This is a damage control meeting. We're here to discuss an act of malicious interference directed at my business and my employee. She turned her gaze to my sister. Amelia, my gallery director in New York received a very disturbing call last week. A woman identifying herself as your sister attempted to slander Maya professionally. We have a transcript of the call. Perhaps you'd like to refresh our memory as to what was said? The color drained from Amelia's face. My mother stared, speechless. They were trapped. Their usual weapons, guilt, gaslighting, emotional theatrics, were useless in this sterile professional environment. Their treachery had been exposed under the fluorescent lights of legal consequence. That's when I finally spoke. I didn't bring you here for an apology, I said, my voice steady. Apologies require remorse, and you are only sorry you got caught. I brought you here to say goodbye. I looked at them, not as my mother and sister, but as two failed business partners. For my entire life, my role was to be your failure. You needed me to be small so you could feel big. You needed me to be wrong, so you could always be right. I looked at Amelia. When you called that gallery, you weren't just trying to hurt me. You were trying to keep me in my place. But all you did was prove that my place is no longer with you. You didn't sabotage my future, you solidified it. I gestured to my aunt. This is my family now. The one that builds, not the one that breaks. My lawyer slid a document across the table. This is a non-contact and non-disparagement agreement, he said. You will cease all contact with Maya, her aunt, and her place of business. You will not speak of her publicly or privately. In return, Ms. Vance has agreed not to press charges for tortious interference. It is a clean break. I stood up, my aunt beside me. The story you love to tell, the one about the difficult, disappointing daughter, is over, I said, looking at them one last time. Now you get a front row seat to the story of my success. and you will watch it from a great distance, in complete silence. We walked out, leaving them in the quiet room with the document that legally erased them from my life. The rejection I had feared my whole life had become my ultimate spectacular liberation. It's been 2 years. The Soho Gallery isn't just a job, it's my home. My chosen family is a chaotic, brilliant collection of artists, writers, and mentors who fill these white walls with more warmth than my childhood house ever had. My Aunt Carol is not just my boss and my family, she's my greatest champion. Tonight is the opening of our biggest show of the year, an exhibition I curated from the ground up. The room is buzzing, flashbulbs are popping, and a critic from the Times just called my work visionary. And I'm standing in the center of it all, not as a disappointment or a problem to be solved, but as myself. I am seen. I am valued. I am home. I haven't spoken to my mother or Amelia since that day in the lawyer's office. The non-contact agreement has been a silent, blessed shield. But I know they're watching. A distant cousin forwarded me a link to my hometown society blog last month. It was a photo of my mother at a charity luncheon, with a caption quoting her about how immensely proud she is of her daughter's meteoric rise in the New York art world. I didn't feel anger. I felt a distant pity. Her last and only move was to lie, to desperately stitch herself to the narrative of the success she tried so hard to destroy. My ascension wasn't loud or vengeful. It was quiet. It was the simple act of planting myself in fertile soil after a lifetime of being told I was a weed. My happiness is not my revenge. It's my proof. Proof that the role of scapegoat only has power over you if you stay in the room. To anyone out there who has been made to feel like the black sheep, the problem, the villain in your own story, your real family is still out there, waiting to find you. Tell us in the comments about the chosen family that saved you. Your story is a masterpiece waiting to be seen. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe for more stories about finding your true exhibition.